Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our ceremony in just a few moments. Please make sure all cell phones have been turned off or set to silent, as well as all alarms placed on silent mode. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the retirement ceremony in honor of Chaplain, Father Major Phillip A. Kaim. Please note that in preparation for today's event, the Blessed Sacrament has been placed in repose. I am Colonel Ike Eisenhower, United States Air Force retired, and it is my honor to serve as your narrator. Today we gather to pay special tribute to Major Kaim upon his retirement from the United States Air Force after 20 years of faithful service. Presiding over today's ceremony is Colonel Virginia Stubblefield, United States Air Force retired. We welcome our special guests with us this evening. Major Kaim's father, Mr. Anthony Kaim. Major Kaim's brother, Mr. Michael Kaim. His godmother, Mrs. Sherry Ploutz. His cousin, Mr. Joseph Pekarchik, Jr. Additionally, we would like to welcome other distinguished guests in attendance. Chief Master Sergeant, United States Air Force retired, Calvin Markham and his wife, Charity. Monsignor William McDonnell, retired. Father David Bouvet, retired. Pastor, St. Rita's Parish in Rockford, and providing today's invocation, the Very Reverend Father Brian Grady. Parochial Vicar, Holy Family Parish, Father Akan Simon. Pastor, St. Mary's Parish in Sycamore, Father Carl Beekman. Chaplain, Boylan High School, Father David Finn. Pastor, Our Lady of Perpetual Help Parish in Sublet, Father Randy Fronick. Additionally, we would like to extend a warm welcome to all other clergy, Holy Family staff and parishioners, and friends of the Kaim family, both in person and joining us online. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the entrance of the official party and remain standing for the posting of the colors, the singing of our national anthem by Mr. Mac Austin, and the invocation by Father Grady. Post the colors.
Oh, take and you'll see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rampant, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land
We invoke your divine assistance, Heavenly Father, upon all present here as we celebrate the retirement of Major Phillip Kaim. Major Kaim, his family, and the Diocese of Rockford look with pride and satisfaction upon his 20 years of faithful service as a chaplain in support of the freedom and defense of this great nation. As we congratulate and thank Major Kaim, we look to you, Heavenly Father, that he and all those who serve may inspire us to likewise give heroically of ourselves for this great land of the United States of America that you in your goodness and love have bestowed upon us. Send your divine blessing upon all our military men and women, especially those deployed at this moment in harm's way. Remember, Lord, in your mercy, all who have paid the ultimate price with their lives for our freedom. Give them, we ask you, eternal refreshment, light, and peace. With humble awareness of our great need, we look always to you, O Lord, that everything we do may begin with your help, continue with your gracious assistance, and in you come to a holy end. Let all our words and actions this day and every day be for your greater glory, you who live and reign with the Son and the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Austin and Father Grady, and to all of you. Thank you. That was tremendous. I will take a quick aside and let you know that at a formal military ceremony where we do this on a base, everyone remains silent when the singing of the national anthem happens, and that was tremendous. So there's a lot of dust in the air here tonight, I think, for me at least. Please be seated. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Stubblefield.
Present here today. I've known Father Kaim for several years. I think the first time was when we went on a pilgrimage to the shrine in Indiana. And I think his parents went along at that time. So it was certainly a blessing. And I'm not going to say much more because he's going to do all the talking today. So Father is going to tell us about his Air Force career and how he decided to come in the Air Force, come in the military, when I understand he didn't have any family background or anyone who was in the military.
Right. You know, I really saw it as Colonel Stubblefield as God's providence. You know, I start by saying I was studying in Rome at the North American College and Seminary, so I'm there 5 years, and the rule there is you have to spend the first summer has to be in Europe, and they give you a lot of latitude on whatever apostolate you would like, but they want you to really get the European flavor, and so you've got to do something. And I had no interest in the military, but the military knows they have this captive audience of all these people that they, you know, men in seminary, they're going to have to do something. So they come every year, they do kind of a dog and pony show, all the different military branches. And so we were all summoning together in an auditorium, and I had no interest in doing it, and there's 40 of my classmates, and I see there's only about 20 there. And of course, misery loves company, you know, so I look around and say, well, where's the rest of my classmates? If I got to do this, you know, why aren't they here? And they said, no, you don't have to be here. If you don't want to do the military for the summer, you know, just leave. I said, all right, fine. I said, I'm leaving. And then just as I said that, they go, okay, we're going to get started, you know. And I was in the front row. I'm like, oh, geez, all right. So I was listening to them, and you know, the thing that really struck me was they mentioned that, and this is true for the Army, I remember them saying Army, and for the Air Force, they had only 100 priests worldwide for those branches. And, you know, I knew enough about the Rockford Diocese to know that we had more than that in the diocese. So this little corner of northern Illinois has more priests than the entire Air Force. You know, so I began to think, well, maybe, at least the summer program I should do do this. So I ended up applying, and then I got in, and then I had a great mentor there, Father Stephen Brosk, and he really, so I spent the summer in Incirlik in Turkey, so just outside of Tarsus. And we did a pilgrimage to Tarsus. I led that, as a seminarian. And I could just see the great need for Catholic priests. So I thought, well, maybe I'll continue to at least do the summers, before I go back to the United States. And so that's kind of what I did. And then I could see God just lining everything up because, first of all, you have to be physically fit, and right now, as it stands, our 18 to 30-year-olds, only 30% qualify to go in the military. They're either overweight, or they got some kind of mental health condition, a drug conviction, something. So I was already part of that 30%, I know I was physically fit, and then when we got closer, I could see also that my ordination class was building, and my ordination class, and I've got, let's see, at least one of my classmates here, Father Dave Finn, we were the second largest in the country. So I'm thinking, well, if anybody can afford to send somebody to the military, maybe it's the Rockford Diocese. And then the last thing, Bishop Dorn had never released anybody for the military. And then, but then the recruiter, Monsignor Sable, he's on the Supreme Court of the Church, the Roman Rota. He was a classmate of the bishop's, and he's recruiting the guys for the Air Force. And I said, Monsignor, I don't know. He's never released anybody. He said, Phil, he said, if you want to get in, he says, I think I can get you in, And so I looked at that connection, Monsignor Sable, all these other things, and I thought, if I'm not called to the military, then who is? So I did a lot of prayer and discernment on that, and then now the military will not take you after you're ordained a priest. As desperate as they are for priests, they still want a couple years of pastoral experience. So I did 3 years at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, and then at the end of those 3 years, I asked the bishop to release me. So I go into the door. He knows what I'm going to ask, and I said, Bishop, I'm going to ask if you can release me for the military. And he says, the previous pastor just retired. He made me the administrator. He goes, I can make you the pastor there at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. And I said, it's a wonderful parish. I would like to as well, Bishop, but, I think God's calling me to the military. And he had a pen in his hand. He just threw it down. And he goes, that's what I thought you'd say. I wanted to say, Bishop, you could say no, And other guys have said to me, a brother priest, I asked the bishop, I know you asked to go in the military, he said no, but he let me go in. I said, you're too valuable. He wanted to get rid of me, so that's the deal. So he let me go in, and I think the bishop did. He was reluctant, but he knew that this was God's call. And so that's partly why I wanted to do this. I felt commissioned by God, why I want to do the retirement ceremony in God's house as I close this chapter. So that's how I got in.
That's how you got in, right,
Yes.
right. Well, tell us about when you left Elizabeth Ann Seton, when you went through boot camp and some of the other experiences.
Yes.
Where you went.
So there's a couple different boot camps. There's one for officers, and they segment it chaplains, doctors, and lawyers. So we still had maid service, so it wasn't that tough a boot camp, But so we had a few of the creature comforts, but the rest of it was pretty military, And I remember them teaching us how to drill, the first day I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to be easy. Get the knack of this, And then the next day is like, all right, Chaplain Kaim, you're going to lead us to breakfast, And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at the zigzagging that's going to be required, and all I kept thinking about was Gomer Pyle, I'm leading these guys, and this guy's barking out orders, and I'm trying to command these guys, and it was ugly, And we got there, but I said, look, I tried to tell you, I said, look, everything I know about the Air Force, I learned from watching I Dream of Jeannie, And Major Nelson, he never drilled, so don't worry, Chaplain, we're going to break you down and we're going to build you up. He said, don't worry, this is what this is all about. Don't get discouraged. I said, okay, all right. So I had one of those there, and then one just for chaplains and another year. They're both 6 weeks. They're still pretty intense, a lot of studies, got to pass the test and so forth. But they get you ready, and they get you ready to serve in the military. So I thought those were great trainings for a chaplain.
So now, his first assignment. Most people get a stateside assignment, not Father Kaim. Father Kaim gets a prestigious assignment to Aviano in Italy. Where else could he be? So you want to tell us about that, Father?
Well, yes. As most people say it's a coveted assignment, but my mom didn't think so, I just spent 5 years in Rome, and then, 3 years at Elizabeth Ann Seton in Crystal Lake, and then I'm going to the military. And I said, all right, Mom, I got my first assignment. I said, it's outside of Venice. And she said, Venice, Florida? I said, no, Mom. I said, the real Venice. She said, oh, Italy again? Why is the Air Force punishing you? I said, Mom, I just went on a priest retreat. I knew nobody, but they happened to be at Mundelein Seminary, and I was in Crystal Lake. And so I go in there, I don't know a soul. I'm not even in the Air Force yet. And this guy taps me on the shoulder. Are you Phil Kaim? I said, yes. It was a brother priest. He goes, I had Aviano, and they stole it from me, and they gave it to you. I said, look, I didn't ask for it, I saw the Jets taking off when I was watching the White Sox spring training games, and I just did a little research, and that's where Davis Montan is. I said, I want to go to Davis Montan, so that was on my list. I didn't ask for Aviano. But, they knew I lived in Rome, and they wanted to bring guys up to Aviano and try to acquaint the seminarians with this program and do long weekends. So that was the reason I got the assignment. So, yes.
So what was it like?
Well, it really is pretty intense, So he's got F-16 fighter jets, and you may think, well, okay, but you're a chaplain, you're not flying. But that impacts everybody on the base. If the mission is critical like that, that means there's going to be a lot of exercises, a lot of inspections. People get fired over these inspections if you fail. So, and we're all in it together. So it's pretty intense. And now a lot of guys, they try to get Aviano, and they may go to Korea. So Korea, you can get what's called a follow-on tour very often, because you may spend literally the whole year in a gas mask, And so, and they know that, and they say, okay, well, we're going to do the best we can to give you your next assignment that you want. So you got kind of a wish list. And so a lot of guys ask for Aviano, and they're like, so a lot of my counseling was like, I asked for Aviano, and I spent a year in a gas mask for this, and I didn't even see it in my family, So there was a lot of stress, and we us chaplains talked about in our counseling how guys would count down the days when they're leaving Aviano. So they liked it, but it was, again, there was nothing that anyone could do about it. It just had to do with the mission. So.
Yeah, right. So while you were at Aviano, you were rated number 1 of 29 company grade officers.
Yes.
And that was in the whole of Europe. That wasn't just in Italy.
Right.
So what did you do?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So what did you do to get this award?
Well, I think a lot of it, I was deployed to Kuwait, and deployments are what you make of it. There's going to be a lot of downtime in deployments, So you gotta really be creative too, and so I was. So one person I developed a good friendship with, I've had ever since, is Marcy Girolamo. So she's director of evangelization at that church in Crystal Lake. And I talked to her, I said, One group that I always kind of felt sorry for were the people that had to work on holidays, so Christmas, Thanksgiving, and so forth. So, like, say, security forces, they might be under what's called, let's just say, one example is the Panama schedule. So that's sometimes called 223. Well, their schedule is 2 days on, 2 days off, and then 3 days on. And then the next 7 days, you kind of reverse it. 2 days off, 2 days on, 3 days off. So if you're off on Christmas, it's only because you happen to be one of those rest days, So I talked to her, I said, wouldn't it be great if we can get some deep dish pizza here to Kuwait, And so I'll give Lou Malnati's credit. I mean, we looked really hard at doing that, and they were going to pack it in dry ice, but basically we calculated that it was going to be too difficult, and that it wasn't going to last, So I said, well, and she ended up, what she did is raise a bunch of money there, and then I bought like 30 pizzas. So I go to, you got a cafeteria that's all free food, and it actually is pretty good on the base or on a deployed location. But then they've got like pizza stands, and then that's out of your own pocket if you want to just splurge and get a slice. I remember walking in there, that guy, and telling him, I said, well, he's just thinking I'm going to get a slice. I said, well, I'd like 30 pizzas. He's like, 30 pizzas? I said, yes. 10 cheese, 10 pepperoni, 10 sausage. 30 pizzas? Yes, 30 pizzas. So we kind of go through it all. He just couldn't believe it. And I remember I was walking out. I was with another chaplain, and we got a couple hundred feet, and he kind of happened to look back. He goes, the pizza guy, he's running after us, Anyway, he had this short guy, like 4'11". He had this big chef hat on. He had an apron down to his ankles, and he's running after us. He goes, 30 pizzas? I said, yes, 30 pizzas, 10 cheese. 10. He's like, okay, he ran back. I think I made him happier than the, the troops. But so, anyways, there's things like that, that you would do. Again, creative ministry, I think, to kind of stand out. So I would say that's a lot of maybe how I got that award.
Right. Well, was there anything else about your deployments that you might want to share?
Well, yeah. A lot of people asked about those pictures with Lance Armstrong and Robin Williams. Actually, it wasn't on the deployment. It was I got back to Italy, and then so I was there, and they had just gone downrange. They came back, and this was the eve of Christmas Eve. So this is December 23rd. They had just done 10 of them, and I knew the priest that was on the USO tour. Not just those two, but Admiral Mullen. So he is the top-ranking military officer. He was Chief of Staff, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he's an admiral, and so for like equivalent in Army or Air Force would be a 4-star general. And he was Catholic, and the priest on there would offer mass on the plane, when they were en route. And so he knew my story, the priest knew my story, and he told Admiral Mullen, and see, Lance Armstrong and I had the same cancer, and we had the same doctor who invented a cure for it. So Admiral Mullen kind of takes me into the Distinguished Visitor Lounge, and he said, Lance, he goes, put that video game down. I got someone I want you to meet, I thought, well, it's just me, So we had a nice chat, and we talked about our doctors and so forth, and he was at that stage where he's retired, but he was now running marathons, and I told him about a St. Sebastian runners group. We were training for the Rome Marathon and so forth. And then Robin Williams is kind of standing like behind us. It looks like he wants to join the conversation. So I got a picture with him and Robin Williams. He goes, oh, this reminds me. I got to get to confession. And, I tell the story because, because then after we're done, then they, it's kind of like they had a bunch of comedians. I would say it's sort of like in a boxing match. If it's Holyfield versus Tyson, you want to watch that, but you got to watch 5 matches before that of people you've never heard of, And so they had these comedians, sort of the undercard. And Robin Williams he came up and he sat through them all, and he's laughing at these guys, this deep belly laugh, as if he's never heard the joke before, even though he's heard it 10 times. And I thought, that's great. That's professional courtesy. Here's a guy like him. showing so much credibility to these guys. And so I mention that just because obviously the tragic circumstances in which he died. But I would say another thing about the deployment is I remember one of my messages is that for folks that have sons, daughters, granddaughters, or grandsons that are deployed, know that the military, they're very protective of their asset, their most precious asset, which is the people. I remember my roommate, the chaplain, the other chaplain in Kuwait, he was the chaplain of the pilots. And the pilots kept saying, hey, why don't you come with us, from Kuwait to go into these missions in Iraq. Now, there was a lot of heavy fighting at that time, and we would never let him in. And he complained a couple times, and then finally, our boss, the head chaplain, he said, listen, he said, if you go on that plane and it gets shot down, heaven forbid, or something happens, we're going to do a military funeral for you with high honors. They're going to play taps, they're going to fold that flag, and then they're going to hand that flag to your wife, and they're going to say, on behalf of the President of the United States, the United States Air Force, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved ones' honor and sacrifice and faithful service. And then your wife's going to receive that, and she's going to say, you see the kids I've got to now raise by myself? Why was my husband on that plane? He's just a chaplain. And you know what? We don't have a good answer for that. That's why you're not on that plane, So I thought it was just a great story, and I think he then got the message that, look, they're just trying to protect us.
Right, yeah. Well, and then you were there when they had the helicopter crash.
Yeah, that was.
Share a little bit about that.
Yes, when I was in Aviano, sad in that in many ways, but it was called an incentive flight. So a couple of guys they re-enlisted, and they got as a sort of a little bonus is to fly in this Black Hawk helicopter, and it crashed. And so I was the chaplain to the detachment, the 1st Regiment Army. So we live in a joint world, so even on this Air Force base, you may have Army regiments. And so the commander was the pilot, and he was killed. About half of them were killed. I did a death notification for one of them, and another one was clinging to life. And I then went to the hospital the next day, and then first of all went to the airport and picked up his parents. And then we took him there, and then the doctors are explaining, we don't know if he's gonna get out of this. He may be in a coma for life. We don't know if he's gonna pull out, and how much mental faculties he'll have. So, clearly was a sad situation. And then, after some, discussions with the family, after we're talking, the parent says, chaplain, he said, we're not Catholic, we're Episcopalian, but our son, he always had the Michael the Archangel medal, and he prayed it every time he went on that helicopter. Well, now you back up. When I first got there, the chaplain I replaced, he had a big statue of St. Michael the Archangel, and he intended to pack it, and the movers didn't pick it up, and it was too late. He was now flying out. He says, why don't you take this and you just give it to somebody you think needs it? Well, now I'm hearing this story, and so the next day I go back to the hospital. I said, you know what? This is your statue of Michael the Archangel. Here's a little prayer card. We're all going to pray to St. Michael. And praise God, within a couple weeks, he came out, and, he went back to the United States. I don't know if he stayed in the Army or not, but he basically good enough that he can walk around and, live a normal married life. So I definitely attribute it to St. Michael. And then he called me when he was much better several months later. He said, Father, I would love for you to do my wedding, And I said, well, I'd love to as well, Sergeant, but the only problem is you or your fiancée, neither one of you is Catholic, And I said, but you could convert, He's like, well, I'm not quite ready yet. I said, okay, that's all right. I wanted to say, St. Michael the Archangel, he's Catholic, But anyways, it's a great story, and he's the greatest saint, obviously, as we know, to pray to.
Oh, so Father, so you finished up your assignment in Aviano.
Yes.
And then it was time to PCS, go to another duty station.
Yes.
And so you got another good assignment.
Yes, yes. So I told my mom, I said, all right, Mom, I got another assignment. And when I told her I got Aviano, I said, don't worry, if you're an officer, you don't get consecutive overseas assignments. You know, the enlisted, they'll get them. They could spend their whole 30 years in overseas, but not me. And so then she said, okay, where are you going now? I said, well, it's outside of Cambridge. You know, she said, Cambridge, Massachusetts? I said, no, well, the real Cambridge, you know, Cambridge, England, you know. And she said, you said, I said, I know, Mom. I said, I'm not in the Union, okay? The Air Force, they can do whatever they want. I said, you know, but the command chaplain came from Europe. He came, he said, look, you know, we kind of marked you for special ops because I broke the record for the fastest mile and a half in the chaplain's boot camp, you know. So now I like to tell people that's like the best pasta in Pakistan, you know, so. That's, you know, remember, I'm not running against pilots here. These are other chaplains, you know, so. I think one of those pictures out there at Aviano, I took second place in a 5K, 18 minutes and 18 seconds. So that's the best I can do, but that's not track time by any means. So that's kind of how I got into that.
So you got Lake and Heath, yeah. I know
Yes.
a lot of people that just stayed overseas and overseas and overseas, and they loved it.
Right.
I wasn't quite so lucky, but
Yes.
anyway. So what did you do with special ops, special operations?
Well, it's just a great atmosphere. The guys are just intense, but they also have a great respect for their chaplains, and they see them as a critical piece of everything that they do. So they had kind of a work hard, play hard mentality.
Can you share a little bit about that? Or?
I'm glad you asked. All right. So this involves a prop and also for me to introduce somebody. So I'm going to ask Chief Master Sergeant Will Markham to come up. And I am going to tell, now let me say, I'm going to embarrass him by saying this man was now after 9/11, this is the first man with boots on the ground in Afghanistan. So 1 month, yes. So 1 month after 9/11, October of 2001, he and a special tactics team, he's a combat controller, so he calls in the airstrike. So he's the first guy they're going to want to take out, you know, because he's so valuable. For what he did, for his bravery and all he did, he was ordered a Silver Star, which is the third highest rank of decorations, I think. So you got the Congressional Medal of Honor, then you have this Distinguished Service Cross, and then you have the Silver Star awarded by the President. You know, so yes. And I told him at his retirement ceremony in 2016 that, you know, I'm going to bring him back. I'm going to have him tell his war stories. So you'll hear more later, you know. He's a native of Waukesha, so he's not far from family, you know. He'll get back here. So anyways, the story at hand. So this is sort of the play hard part. So we're playing ultimate football. And now, you want to score a goal like you are in football, but the rules are different. So you just can't throw like a long pass. You can throw it to a teammate, but it's got to be underhand. And you just can't run down the field like if you had one guy that's fast. You can only go like, it's like, I think 2 paces, and you have to pass it to a teammate. You could run side by side or run backwards all you want, but you can't go forward any more than 2 until you have to give it to another guy. If you drop it, if somebody drops it, then it's a dead ball, and the other team gets it. You know, well, I was apparently, I had a case of the fumbleitis that day. So, Chief, the man who is trained to adapt to situations, master motivator, who knows that sometimes you got to motivate individually. He pulls me aside. He goes, Chaplain, he says, come over here. He goes, you see this football? I said, yeah. He goes, it's not a football. And he said, this is baby Jesus. I got the message. Now fast forward to the staff meeting a week later, and so it's Commander Colonel Ireland, and he's got all his team, and I do like a thought for the day to start him off. And before I do the thought for the day, he goes, now Chaplain, he goes, what got into you? He said, you were incredible on that field, you know. You were everywhere, your team won every game. He said, what got into you, you know? And I kind of looked at Chief and I just gave him the wink, you know, like that. Maybe the Jordan shrug, and you know, so he's like, well, come on up, I'm gonna coin you. So there's a tradition in the military, if you do something significant, they'll give you a coin, you salute the commander. Usually it's more significant than something like this, you know, but, so anyways, that's the story. Now, fast forward to his retirement, 2016, I fly down to Tampa for it. And the retiring officer, so the equivalent of Colonel Stubblefield, is that Colonel Ireland. Well, he was a lowly colonel when I knew him. He's now a general, you know. And he's doing the retirement ceremony. And he tells this story again, you know. And now they warned me about this. I was like in the fourth row. They said, Chaplain Kaim, stand up, you know, and get out of the row. And so one last time to show that it took, he threw the ball to me. And I caught it, you know. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Boy, that was quite an activity there, huh? So did you ever deploy with Special Ops?
Yes, I did on several occasions. One of them, we were in Croatia, and so you'll spend like a week just putting the tents up. Communications will set up all their links and so forth, and then the exercise will kick off, and they'll tell you the day it's going to kick off. So I remember it's kicking off, and it was early in the morning. I'm like, oh, geez. I said, why don't they start these at reasonable hours? You know, it's just an exercise, you know. Well, then Sergeant Kalinowski, who you know, Chief, he starts yelling. He goes, Chaplain, get into the commander's tent. He said, this is real world. Well, this was 9/11, you know. So 9/11 it was Benghazi, basically, the anniversary of 9/11, you know. And so they're like, look, you know, we think, you know, our ambassador has been killed in Benghazi, and you know, and basically, if you see that movie 13 Hours, there's the Pentagon is kind of assessing things. Where are our assets at? Well, we got a bunch of special ops guys in Croatia. All right, we'll send a bunch of them. So he's like, look, we don't know what's going to happen. The exercise is going to continue. As it turns out, about half of them went out there, and then I stayed back, and about half we still did a kind of a scaled down exercise. But you know, but anyways, and then Chief turned to me and he said, he goes, Colonel Ireland's going to turn to you in a few minutes here, so just be ready, you know. So, and I just thought that was great. At a critical moment, you know, that they would ask for God's providence and His protection, you know, at that moment, you know. Yeah. So it shows you, you know, again, how important all that is. So, you know, that was probably, you know, and a couple other exercises and deployments with them, but I think, you know, that one kind of jumps out at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now you're pretty much wrapping up your tour in Europe, and it's time to come back to the States.
Yes.
So what's next?
So yes, so I go to Cannon Air Force Base. So the special ops said that we'd like to keep you, and I said, oh great. Hurlburt in Florida, that's the MAGCOM. I said, well, we already have a Catholic priest there. How would you like the desert of New Mexico? So, all right, that's fine, that's fine. You know, I've had my time to play, you know, in England and Italy. So
Mom was happy you were back in the States?
Yes, right. When I said New Mexico, she thought I said Mexico. I said, no, Mom, New Mexico. All right, she could kind of handle that. You know, my mom, when it comes to coveted assignments, she steps out her porch and then she just draws concentric circles around the house, you know, so there's a base, you know, Bishop Kagan is up in Bismarck, you know, North Dakota. There's a base right there, Minot. Well, it's North Dakota, you know. The saying is, why not Minot? Freezing is the reason, you know.
That's true.
So anyways, but she could handle New Mexico. And so, you know, what's unique there is, so it's special ops, but they also have RPAs, so remotely piloted aircraft. So everybody calls them drones. They don't like that term, so don't use drones. You know, you're on one of these pilots, you know. But there's a term they use, deployed in place. You know, deployed in place. So, you know, if you're in some tough warfare and you're deployed, you're not with your family. You can kind of process all this stuff. But these guys are 12 or 14 hours. They might be working, and they're going after the bad guys from their little seat in New Mexico, and maybe it kind of takes a toll on them that day. And they go back home, they can't talk about any of that to their family. Their kids just want to know, when are you going to put up the Christmas tree, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's tough, you know, it's really tough for these guys. So, so that's kind of what they deal with. And one time, at our 8 o'clock mass, this guy, he ended up coming to me for counseling after. He said, I don't know if you noticed, but on Sunday, I left right after the gospel. And he said, you know, the gospel was love your enemies. And he said, it's been, you know, that entire night, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., killing some bad guys. And I just lost it. You know, I just started crying. And so we kind of processed through all that. And, you know, it's not easy, you know, so that's a little bit what's unique about the RPA community. So keep them in your prayers.
Okay, so we know you're a workaholic, and we know you're very innovative.
Yes.
And so when you were at Cannon, your Knights of Columbus membership went up, and the collections went up. How did you do that?
Yes, the Knights, they went up 300%. I've not been able to do that here yet, you know. And, you know, it's one of my evangelization principles is to get big, you got to get small. To get big, you got to get small. In other words, if you want to expand the parish, you still have to have that kind of small parish feel where people know each other, that people are not coming in anonymous and leaving anonymous, you know. And that's what our whole ambassador program is about, you know, to be named, noticed, and known. People will come to Mass if those three things happen, and they'll stay engaged. And so we had fellowship every weekend, and coffee and donuts, and so we would go, we'd have everyone go in there, and then we have about half the guys were in the Knights of Columbus, and they would say, all right, they just look at the guys. All right, who knows that guy? You know, who can go to him to ask him to be a member, you know, of the Knights? And it's better than coming from me, because, you know, they might just say yes to me just to sign up. But if they got somebody in their unit, and then when they have a pancake breakfast, this guy's going to call them, you know. So it was just sort of a divide and conquer strategy, you know, basically, and that it was effective.
And it worked. It worked.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, Father, before we wrap this up, if you had a single time in your 20 years that you're very proud of, what would you say?
I would say, you know, it's talked about five airmen off the ledge of suicide, you know, so that is, you know, it's, I won't call it an epidemic, but it's something that, you know, is very much out there. And so the chaplains were blessed with absolute confidentiality, which the mental health industry in the military doesn't even have. So they, you know, if they tell someone that they're thinking of harming themselves, their commander may have to, or may very well know. They may be duty bound to tell someone, but not chaplains. You know, so they know there's a sanctuary and it's safe with a chaplain. And then, you know, it's just a matter of me just trying to coax them and getting them to the right person. And I'm just not going to leave his sight if he says that he was thinking of harming himself, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up this session. If you want to thank Father for all his time in the service, let's give him a big round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we're going to move on to the formal part of the ceremony now. Publish the orders.
Please stand for the presentation of the Meritorious Service Medal and remain standing for the publishing of the official retirement order. Attention to orders. To all who shall see these presents, greeting. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America, authorized by Executive Order 16 January 1969, has awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, 1st Oak Leaf Cluster, to Major Phillip A. Kaim for meritorious service 1 July 2015 to 30 September 2020. Major Phillip A. Kaim distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Catholic Chaplain, Individual Mobilization Augmentee, 27th Special Operations Wing, Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico. During this period, Chaplain Kaim's pastoral leadership ensured the spiritual well-being of nearly 6,000 airmen and their families in a stressful, high operations tempo environment. He expertly built and executed 3 annual Catholic chapel tithes and offering fund budgets totaling over $320,000, ensuring robust, spiritual, comprehensive airman fitness across the base. Additionally, he spearheaded 15 faith services for 26 squadrons, boosting attendance to 65% and increasing Catholic offerings by over $2,000. Major Kaim secured embedded joint space for the wing chaplain and preservation of the Force and Family program, increasing chaplaincy care and support for 250 airmen by 33%. Following the tragedy of a suicide, Chaplain Kaim compassionately and professionally supported grieving unit teammates, enabling healing and redoubling focus on resiliency for 259 airmen. Furthermore, he led 2 pilgrimages to 3 sacred sites, orchestrating 8 base organizations and fortifying 58 airmen and family members' resiliency. Finally, Major Kaim organized 25 parish members' completion of the Baton Memorial March, honoring veterans and galvanizing understanding of selfless sacrifice. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Major Kaim reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force.
Publish the orders.
Attention to orders. Reserve Special Order number Echo Kilo 2125, dated 28 January 2020. Major Phillip A. Kaim, 27th Special Operations Wing, Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico. Effective 30 September 2020, you are relieved from active duty, organization, and station of assignment. Retired effective 1 October 2020, per Air Force Instruction 36-3203 in the grade of Major, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Colonel Stubblefield will now present Major Kaim with his retirement certificate of service. It reads, Certificate of Retirement from the Armed Forces of the United States of America. To all who shall see these presents, greeting. This is to certify that Major Phillip A. Kaim, having served faithfully and honorably, was retired from the United States Air Force on the first day of October, 2020. Signed, Richard W. Scobie, Lieutenant General, United States Air Force, Chief of the Air Force Reserve, and Charles Q. Brown, Jr., General, United States Air Force, Chief of Staff. Colonel Stubblefield will now present Major Kaim with a certificate of appreciation from the 45th President of the United States, under whom he served upon his official retirement in October 2020. It reads, Certificate of Appreciation for Service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America. I extend to you my personal thanks and the sincere appreciation of our grateful nation for your contribution of honorable service to our country. You have helped maintain the security of the nation during a critical time in its history with a devotion to duty and a spirit of sacrifice in keeping with the proud traditions of military service. I trust that in the coming years you will maintain an active interest in the armed forces and the purpose for which you served. Those who follow in your footsteps will draw inspiration from your commitment, dedication, and sacrifices made to ensure the protection of our American freedoms. My best wishes to you for happiness and success in the future. Signed, Donald J. Trump, Commander-in-Chief. Colonel Stubblefield will now present Major Kaim with a letter of appreciation from the 43rd President of the United States. Dated 22 July 2021, it reads, Dear Philip, thank you for your service in the United States Armed Forces. I am proud to have served as your Commander-in-Chief, and I am pleased to join your family, friends, and colleagues in recognizing your career and accomplishments. Throughout history, the dedicated men and women of our military have protected our citizens and preserved the ideals that make our country strong. Their courage and sacrifice have inspired countless people and have helped shape America's character. On behalf of a grateful nation, I thank you for your contributions to our security and to the cause of peace and freedom. Your service, patriotism, and selfless devotion have helped advance the universal hope of liberty at home and around the world. Laura and I send our best wishes for health and happiness in the years ahead. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless America. Sincerely, George W. Bush. Colonel Stubblefield will now present Major Kaim with a letter of appreciation from the Archdiocese for the Military Services USA, dated 29 July 2021. It reads, Dear Father Kaim, as you conclude 20 years of outstanding pastoral ministry to the nation and to the men and women of the United States Air Force as a Catholic chaplain, I am pleased to offer you my thanks. The Lord must look with kindness upon one who has served him so well. Throughout your years of service, you have touched many lives, as you have brought the saving gospel of our Lord to countless souls eager and hungry for the good news of salvation. Your pastoral zeal and priestly kindnesses will undoubtedly be remembered by the men and women of the United States Air Force, for whom you have been a source of strength. Your devoted priestly zeal as an Air Force chaplain will not be forgotten by the good people whose lives you touched. You and the Diocese of Rockford can be justly proud of your commitment. Please know that you will always be considered a member of the Archdiocesan family, and of course, will always be in my prayers. With prayerful wishes I remain, fraternally in Christ, the Most Reverend Timothy P. Broglio, Archbishop for the Military Services, with courtesy copy to the Most Reverend David J. Malloy.
Yes.
Would Mr. Anthony Kaim please come forward? Every retiree receives a special retirement pin as a memento of their active duty service. At this time, we'd like to ask Major Kaim's father to place the pin on Major Kaim's lapel to symbolize his transition from active duty to retired status. This pin stands as a testament of his service to our great nation. To all who see it, know that Major Phillip A. Kaim has met all challenges set before him and has served our country with pride, honor, and dignity. Thank you, Mr. Kaim. Mrs. Mary Rita McCarthy, if you would please come forward. Mrs. McCarthy is president of the Holy Family Women's Guild and will now present Father Kaim with his shadow box. The shadow box is a traditional gift which is presented to a retiring military member. It is an attempt, in some small measure, to capture all that is a lifetime spent in service to one's country. Tailored to the desires of the retiree, it contains various symbols of his service, such as his ascension through the ranks, sacrifices, successes, and assignments that have spanned a career. Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy. Colonel Stubblefield will now present the certificate that accompanies the flag, which will be presented to Father Kaim shortly. It reads, "This is to certify that the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol. The flag was flown at the request of the Honorable Adam Kinzinger, Member of Congress, in recognition of the retirement of Major Phillip A. Kaim after more than 20 years of honorable service. It is presented to Major Kaim and on behalf of a grateful nation for his selfless commitment to the defense of our republic and service as an Air Force chaplain. Signed, J. Brett Blanton, Architect of the Capitol." Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a special presentation by VFW Post 9759, Loves Park Honor Guard. For more than 200 years, the American flag has been the symbol of our nation's unity, as well as a source of pride and inspiration for millions of citizens. Born on June 14, 1777, the Second Continental Congress determined that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternating between 7 red and 6 white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field representing a new constellation. Between 1777 and 1960, the shape and design of the flag evolved into the flag presented before you today. The 13 horizontal stripes represent the original 13 colonies, while the stars represent the 50 states of the Union. The colors of the flag are symbolic as well. Red symbolizes hardiness and valor. White signifies purity and innocence. And blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Traditionally a symbol of liberty, the American flag has carried the message of freedom and inspired Americans both at home and abroad. In 1814, Francis Scott Key was so moved at seeing the Stars and Stripes waving after the British shelling of Baltimore's Fort McHenry that he wrote the words to the Star-Spangled Banner. In 1892, the flag inspired Francis Bellamy to write the Pledge of Allegiance, our most famous flag salute and patriotic oath. In July 1969, the American flag was flown in space when Neil Armstrong planted it on the surface of the moon. Today, our flag flies on constellations of Air Force satellites that circle our globe and on the fin flash of our aircraft in harm's way in every corner of the world. Indeed, it flies in the heart of every airman who serves our great nation. The sun never sets on our U.S. Air Force, nor on the flag we so proudly cherish. Since 1776, no generation of Americans has been spared the responsibility of defending freedom. Today's airmen remain committed to preserving the freedom that others won for us for generations to come. By displaying the flag and giving it a distinctive fold, we show respect to the flag and express our gratitude to those individuals who fought and continue to fight for freedom at home and abroad. Since the dawn of the 20th century, airmen have proudly flown the flag in every major conflict, on lands and in skies around the world. It is their responsibility, our responsibility, to continue to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and freedoms that we, as Americans, enjoy today. The United States flag represents who we are. It stands for the freedom we all share and the pride and patriotism we feel for our republic. We cherish its legacy as a beacon of hope to one and all. Long may she wave. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to introduce, for the very first time, Major Phillip A. Kaim, United States Air Force, retired.
Thank you so much. It's just so touching for all of you to be here. And just as Colonel Ike said, just from the tone set by the singing of the national anthem, I could see this is a people who love their faith and love their country. you know. I wanted to give a gift to my dad. So my dad is a carpenter by training, and this, of course, is the year of St. Joseph. And so I've got a little statue of St. Joseph. Next time I won't try to buy it in the year of St. Joseph. There's a lot of statues on back order. But I got one I think you'll still like. So thank you, Dad, for fostering my vocation. Okay, thank you. And it's customary to give a gift to your mother as well, or a wife. And as you all know, I have been without my mom since January, and all your prayers and the masses, especially you've been saying, have been so comforting to me and my family. And so I'm going to present this bouquet to our Blessed Mother. So please kneel with me. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, Queen of Peace, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Before I get into my remarks, I just wanted to kind of, first of all, give so many thank yous that are necessary. First, I would like to ask all of our veterans to please stand up. Isn't that a great sight? Thank you all. I want to thank my family, of course, for coming, and my dad especially, who has really transitioned so well. People are always asking, how's he doing? How's the widower doing? And he's doing great. He's doing great. So you'll get a chance to talk to him afterwards. My retiring official, Colonel Stubblefield, we actually didn't serve together. She retired 5 years before I got in, so she's been retired for 25 years. And she can still fit into her uniform. How about that? They're really put in touch together by Marcy Girolamo, who said, you're going to like this woman. You know, she's Air Force, and she's head of the conference for the Third Order Carmelites, which she was now in, and I think she'd be a great pilgrimage person. And so you've been on about 10 of them. We went to Vietnam, that's in the program, you know, and went to the Vietnam Museum, among other places. Went to the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam, that iconic picture of the last helicopter going out, if you remember that. Some great memories along the way, so I thank you. Other people in the program, Colonel Ike Eisenhower, thank you. He just put all this together. I mean, he had that kind of military bearing that I didn't have, that he was able to with great precision, only a protocol officer would envy, had put this whole polish to it. So I thank you, Ike. Ike and I served together at Aviano, so he was a deputy maintenance group commander in 2007 when I met him, and we've stayed in touch really ever since. And then he retired after 33 years in the Air Force this past January, and did his retirement invocation, you know, at that. So we've stayed in touch along the way. The rest of those in the program, Father Grady replaced me at Crystal Lake when I went into the military. And actually came and preached over a weekend at my chapel in the Milden Hall in England. So it was great to have him on our base and be with him all these years. My brother priests as well, all of them, thank you for coming. Mac Austin is the father of one of my classmates. And where is Mac at? So thank you for that stirring rendition of the national anthem. Appreciate that. And then Marcy Girolamo have mentioned, she plans all my pilgrimages. So if I do a pilgrimage, it's Marcy. I just come up with the idea, and then she executes everything, So it's just been great. Women's Guild for getting that shadow box, putting that together all on their own, and then hosting, or organizing the reception afterwards. Certainly, I want to thank Bishop Doran for allowing me to go into the military, and then Bishop Malloy, who continued to allow me to continue to serve until I completed my 20 years. In 1676, Sir Isaac Newton wrote, "If I have seen a little further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants." If I've seen a little further, it's by standing on the shoulder of giants. I thought, I've given you a glimpse of my career. I thought I would mention, just cherry pick a few of the great Catholic chaplains in history, knowing that there's so many great ones that have come before me. And I'll just kind of briefly go through the early part of our history. In the American Revolutionary War, we had a Catholic chaplain. The first one, he was a 60-year-old French-Canadian priest, and he's recruited by Benedict Arnold. But for the Continental Army, for us, and ironically, he was not able, his bishop suspended his faculties because the bishop was actually loyal to the British. How do you like that? It's so ironic because this man was recruited by Benedict Arnold. So he never served, and no Catholic priest served as a military chaplain during the American Revolutionary War. The original 13 colonies, only one, Pennsylvania, permitted Catholics to worship freely. So back in 1775, only 1% of our country was Catholic at the time. They've got a picture of Father Corby in the back. So I got all my trinkets are in the fellowship hall. Be sure to, even if you don't say hello to me, you can go straight into the fellowship hall. We've got cake and champagne for you in there, and I've got all my trinkets. One of them is a picture of Father Corby. He does the general absolution for the guys in the Civil War. So there's a line of all the guys, no way he could do all their confessions. He just gives them straight general absolution. But there's always a catch with that. If you survive this battle, you still got to go to confession, So anyways, he was there. I want to fast forward to World War I. The Army has a problem, World War I. In April 1917, when the U.S. entered the war, the commander of the American Expeditionary Force, General John J. Pershing, had promised the French that he was coming over with tanks, bombs, and airplanes, none of which he had. All he had was men. So during the first weeks, they scrambled to assemble a military. Another shortage was that he only had 8 Catholic chaplains. For help, the bishops turned to the Knights of Columbus, who had experiencing operating social and recreational centers on Army bases. Reps of the Knights of Columbus approached General Pershing, asking for permission to enlist priests as unofficial volunteer chaplains. Pershing signed on to the Knights of Columbus plan. Father Duvall was one of those they recruited. He stayed on the front lines throughout the offensives. At one point, he ventured into no man's land. They found him wounded and unconscious beside the body of a dead soldier. He had fallen victim to mustard gas. He was evacuated to a field hospital where the doctors recommended he go home. He refused and insisted upon being treated and sent back to the front lines. He never fully recovered, but returned to the front lines. He finished the war with his men. His archbishop assigned him to a parish when he returned, but the priest's health was ruined. In 1920, on May 19th, 30 minutes before he died, he was notified that he had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, so the second highest decoration someone could receive. They pinned the medal to his chasuble at his wake. Moving on to World War II, on the morning of December 7, 1941, Father Schmidt had just finished saying Mass for the men of the USS Oklahoma. He was below deck when 8 torpedoes struck the ship. The only way out was through a porthole. He helped a dozen men escape through the porthole, but he couldn't get out himself. He was too big to squeeze through. He was among the 429 who died aboard the Oklahoma, a casualty rate second only to the USS Arizona with 1,100 men. The decomposed bodies were not recognizable. They did find his chalice and prayer book, and the family donated them to Loras College in Iowa, his alma mater. I mention that especially because we have so many Loras College alums. He was the first chaplain killed in World War II. Years later, thanks to DNA testing, they identified his body. And 4 years ago, his remains came home. They had a mass at his home parish in Iowa, and they laid him to rest at Loras College. Then we have the famed story of the weather prayer. How many have seen Patton? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about, Patton. So Patton brings in the chaplain. Chaplain, I want a weather prayer. He's like, a weather prayer, sir? He said, yeah. He said, we want to launch an offensive. And he said, the weather's not cooperating. And he's like, I said, I don't know. He said, how this is going to fare. Give us clear skies so we can kill our fellow man. And Patton says, I'll have you know, because of my intimate connections with the Almighty, if you say a good prayer, the Lord will hear it and we'll have good weather. I want that prayer in an hour. Aye, sir. So this was a Catholic priest he's talking to. Well, he writes, I think there's, a very good prayer balancing, the protection of life and so forth with liberating and crushing the oppressing of the enemy. And Patton loved the prayer, and he ordered to have 250,000 copies printed and see to it that every man in the Third Army got one. Army printers worked night and day to fulfill that order. And then you see in the movie, they cut then to the day that they're going to launch this. And they look and he said, look at that, General, clear skies. It's a miracle. And he said, where's that chaplain at? He's in good with the Lord, and I aim to decorate him, In 1942, Father Francis Sampson left his post as a high school teacher and enlisted in the Army as a chaplain. He volunteered to serve the 501st Parachute Regiment of the 101st Airborne. Frankly, I did not know when I signed up for the Airborne that chaplains would be expected to jump from an airplane in flight. Otherwise, I never would have signed up. He was one of those who parachuted out on D-Day. His pack, which weighed over 100 pounds, would have pulled him down and drowned him, so he cut it off and let it sink. At dawn the next day, a German unit arrived at the house they were at. They marched him outside and put him against the wall. He was so frightened that instead of praying the act of contrition, he kept repeating, "Bless us, O Lord, and these I give." As the Germans' firing squad raised their rifles, an officer stepped forward and ordered them to stop. He had realized that the prisoner was a Catholic priest, and the German officer was Catholic. The Germans interrogated Father Sampson and then let him return to the farmhouse and tend to the wounded Americans. The next day, an American unit recaptured the area around the farmhouse, and after the war, he returned to teaching, but then he re-enlisted in the Korean War. He remained a military chaplain until his retirement, and he was promoted to be the chief of chaplains, serving from 1967 to 71. He retired as a 2-star general. It's said that Father William Cummings coined the phrase, "There are no atheists in the foxholes." He was 25 and he was ordained a priest for the Maryknols. He was assigned to the Philippines. When news of Pearl Harbor broke out, he dressed in a white tropical cassock, showed up at the Army headquarters, and volunteered to serve as a chaplain. He was 38 years old and had chronic back pain. They didn't want to take him, but he would not take no for an answer. They commissioned him a first lieutenant. Surprisingly, he survived the Bataan Death March, but not the POW camp. When Father Lawrence Lynch was assigned to be Catholic chaplain to the troops of New Caledonia, he disarmed the men by introducing himself as God's gift to the U.S. Army. He was a high-energy, big personality guy, so going out for beers with a group of soldiers came naturally to him. And it made him approachable to the men who needed some counseling or spiritual advice. To discourage the men from hanging up pin-up dolls, he distributed pictures of Our Lady of Perpetual Help, saying that was his girlfriend. His relentless schedule led the men to nickname him Father Cyclone. You know, I won't say much about the next two priests only because you probably have heard a lot, and that is Father Emil Capone. He was awarded the nation's highest military honor, the Medal of Honor, by President Obama in 2013. You might remember that. And Vietnam Chaplain Vince Capodanno. Both of those guys' cause for canonization has continued. Both have documentaries well worth seeing. And finally, Iraqi War Chaplain Tim Vakic, he was on his 12th anniversary of his ordination to the priesthood when his Humvee was struck by an IED and he was severely wounded. And so I went to go see him a month before I went into the military and to get a little inspiration, get a blessing from him before I went, and then he died about a year or two later. Finally, let me just wrap up, pivot really from the chaplains to just kind of the transformation I think can happen to all of us in the military. You know, and this is a little short excerpt from a speech to the VFW by General Jumper. Now, he was Chief of the Staff of the Air Force when I first got in. He said, "When I get good and fed up with what's going on in Washington, D.C., I go out to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. Every Friday morning at Lackland, we bring 1,000 new men into the Air Force. You have 1,000 on the parade field, and 2,000 or 3,000 parents and loved ones out there in the audience. So they come off the parade field and you sit back in the shadows and you watch them as they come back together with their parents for the first time in several weeks. And you'll see the same scene every single time. Mothers walk right by their kids. They don't even recognize them. Some kid standing in front of his or her mother or father saying, 'Mom, Dad, it's me.' I heard one dad say, 'That ain't the kid I brought here.' He said the kid I brought here looked like he fell down the steps with his tackle box in his hand and a pierced lip." But it is his kid. And what do is go out there and you shake these kids' hands. I always ask them the same question: are you proud of yourself? Are you proud of yourself? And the answers you get are amazing. "Sir, this is the first time I've ever been proud of anything I've ever done. Sir, this is the first time my dad has ever told me he was proud of me." And one 19-year-old female that I quote all the time, "Sir, this is the first time I've ever felt I was a part of something bigger than myself." And what's the difference? The difference, General Jumper said, is they're exposed to a little bit of leadership, a sense of commitment, and most of all, they're exposed to pride. They're exposed to pride, and once you feel that first ounce of pride, you can never turn back. Proud of my 20 years in the Air Force, I now close this chapter and continue to serve you faithfully as your priest. Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you, Major Kaim. The men and women of the United States Air Force are proud to have served with you. You will always be a valuable member of our Air Force family. We wish you every success in your future endeavors. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the playing of the Air Force song and the departure of the official party. A receiving line will form in the narthex. Additionally, Major Kaim and his family invite you to join him for a reception located in St. Gabriel Hall. Thank you again for joining us today.
joking. Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, shut, yeah, I've got to shut this off.